Let's see. Okay, we're live. Let me make sure it's going in Facebook, and we'll get started. Okay, and we are live.
Yes, live and
Yeah.
direct.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Discovery Within podcast, where we explore the depths of self-discovery and personal growth. I'm your host, Coach T.
And I'm your co host, LJ the Peacemaker. And today we're delving into crafting your new story, where we'll be talking about some practical tips on overcoming limiting beliefs and really rewriting your personal narrative.
Yes, yes. So y'all already know we're gonna get straight into it. But before we do that, come in, join the chat, let us know where you're viewing from, and if you haven't already, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share the video with someone. Get them in here to join this conversation with us because we like to hear what you think as well. So
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a dialogue between Coach T and I, but you are also part of the conversation. So we want to hear your feedback, your questions, comments, so that we can really continue to address those, not just talk about what we think is important. We want to hear from you.
that's right. That's right. So let's get into it. This title here, I think it's gonna be a good one.
I
um,
agree.
Especially like during this time because we hear a lot of people, and I'm sure even myself, and I'm pretty sure you've done it before too, where we'll complain about our lives and where we're at, and you've been in that woe is me position before. I've been in it too, and then
Yes.
you just come to this point where you don't really like the life that you live in. You feel like you're suffering, but then there comes a point of, okay, now that you know where your current story is, you don't like it, you know what's unpleasant about it, how are we going to move and proceed to creating a better life, or the
Right.
life that you would want for yourself? So, first, you always have to lay the foundation. You got to start with where you currently are before you even go on to creating the story that you want to see. And for me, once I had to learn on my journey when I was doing all my complaining and stuff and being unhappy and in these bad moods, I learned to be grateful because I had got to a point where I was just like, man, I'm unhappy. I feel like my life should be, you know, far better than where I'm at. I feel like I should be ahead in my career, my finances, and all that. But it's like, are you grateful now?
Right.
How do you feel like you deserve better? What actions have you taken to make sure that you're gonna create the life that you desire for yourself? And so that really puts you on the spot because
Yes.
when you're talking about creating a new story for yourself and you feel like you deserve this and how you have this plan of what your life should look like, then it's time to get to work. And I don't just mean on the outer and taking like the physical actions. I mean like the inner action. So you got to be talking about that mind work, you know, those emotions and stuff, and changing those old beliefs and stuff so that you can start to create. You can't create anything, you can't build anything on a rocky foundation. If that foundation is already crumbled, then how do you expect for anything to prosper? You got to start from ground zero, and
Absolutely.
we start this thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, the gratitude piece is so critical. And what we oftentimes don't realize is that gratitude is a mindset. It's a certain frequency that you tap into. We're made to think that you have to acquire something, then I'll be grateful. When I get all the way over here, then I'll be grateful. Once I reach this level, then I'll be grateful. And it's
Hmm.
like by not being grateful right now, we're repelling things to be grateful for. You know what I mean? When you are grateful in the present moment, then more things to be grateful for are attracted to you. I mean, it's almost like with people. If someone does something for you or you do something for them and they're so grateful, they're like, thank you so much, that meant so much, I really appreciate you, you're more likely to do more for them, which ultimately their gratitude is creating more things to be grateful for. And so, we really do have the power to tap into these things that we want, but we have to take a real honest, cold, hard look at ourselves, because I know for me in the beginning of my journey, it's like my life sucks. I'm not happy with any aspect of my life. I don't know what's going on. I've been working so hard all these years to accumulate what? This mess? Like, what is going on? And so I really had to sit myself down, and I'm looking around and I'm like, the things I want are not outlandish. I just want a little comfort, a little peace, some security. It's like those things do exist. I'm not making them up. You know what I mean? I'm looking around, I see other people have it. So I really had to ask myself, why is it that I don't have it? Because I am working hard, I am exerting maximum effort, I'm not lazy. And so, after being honest with myself, it was like, it's clearly your approach. You don't know what you're doing. You're working hard, but you don't know which direction to go. And you
Mhm.
really need to learn some new things. So all that old stuff you thought you knew, let it go, because that's what's led you here. And you don't want to be here. So, it was really about that honesty piece and really being able to look at myself and admit that, in my late 30s, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with my life.
See, and see, that's when you know you're on a good start because the first step is to be honest with yourself.
Yes,
How you expect to, change anything if you're in denial about where you are currently? And so that was profound when you was talking about you're gonna have to look at things a little bit different. So that means you have to be open to looking at things from a different perspective. And that's where that gratitude piece comes in because you could be sitting up here talking about, oh, my life is not where I want it to be. It's not really moving. Things are feeling slow. I feel stuck. There's no motion for me. But instead, you could probably flip that around and look at it as something that's great for you. Like right
yeah,
now, this is where I need to be at. It's not necessarily bad. It could just be that something here to help me to propel myself forward, something here to help grow me. This right here, this season where I'm at currently in my life could be trying to show me something about myself. And that's essentially what it is. Because all things that are happening outside of you are a direct reflection of what's going on in the inside. But most
absolutely.
of us don't like to admit that though. We
No, we
like
don't. We don't.
we like to point fingers and blame other people. And like, "Look, this person just and it's like that person shouldn't bother you that much. If you're so
Right,
secure, if you're secure within yourself and your foundation within you is solid, it doesn't matter what's going on outside of you because the outside stuff you have no control of. But when you talking about you want to, rewrite your script, you want something different for your life, okay, that means you're gonna have to be the one that pick up that pen.
right. That's right. That's absolutely right. And I mean, I think too, it has to come to a point where you're so sick and tired of your current circumstance that you're no longer willing to be sick and tired. You know what I
Mm-mm.
mean? Because a lot of people are sick and tired and they just keep going through the motions. But when you get to a point where you're like, this is no longer okay for me, then you begin to seek out new directions, seek out new ways of thinking, of living, of approaching life, because you are just in need of something different. You know that, okay, I have the power to make some kind of change. And ultimately, in the beginning of our journey, we don't realize how powerful we truly are, but we do have enough sense to know that, okay, I can start doing some things differently. And as we begin to approach small things differently, it snowballs into larger things, and it really just helps us to gradually acknowledge our power. Because no matter what mindset we currently have, there's only two options. You could have an empowered mindset or a disempowered one. And so it's up to us to really distinguish with the choices that we're making, which one am I operating on? Because the blaming and the victim mentality is very disempowering. It means that your life is dependent on what other people are doing.
Woo.
And I mean, how are we ever going to get anywhere if we're believing that? We won't. That leaves us trapped and stuck. So, unless we're willing to take this empowered approach, meaning accept that the mess we're looking at, we're the one who made it, But then that too means that we're the one who can clean it up. We're the one who can make it better. We're the one who can make the change. And so it's really about that, accepting the truth. The truth
Mhm.
is that you have the power. You've
Mhm.
always had the power. And for the past is already done. We can't change that, but you can go forward differently. And that's what rewriting your story is all about. You are able to write a new story because ultimately our whole life is our story. And so a lot of times maybe we're not physically writing it down, but once your life is over, what will have been said about you? That is your
Mhm.
story. What will be
Exactly.
written from the beginning to the end. So that really depicts that this is our story. We are writing a story.
Mhm.
And we have to really hone in on, what do I want my story to say? Do I want my story to say I was born, I died, and that was that? Like nothing happened in between, or nothing that I desire was ever fulfilled. I never pursued a dream. I never followed through. I never, risked everything I could on myself. I
Mhm.
highly doubt that that's what we want to be written about us. And we have the capacity to go for what we want. We just have to believe that it's possible. And it starts one step at a time.
That's right. One foot in front of the other. And Leslie says, "Hey, ladies,"
Hey,
and then she said,
Leslie.
"Ooh, y'all in my business." Look, look, it's our business too. Look, you ain't on this journey alone. We ain't just
That's
talking to
right,
you.
exactly. And I mean, that's a key piece, that vulnerability piece. We putting out our own business out there, and we putting everybody else on blast too.
Don't be putting my business out there in the street. But yeah, just like you were saying, that it's so empowering when you step into your own power and you don't run away from it. Because like you said, your story, your life story, that is your story. So just like all the history that we have, the history books and stuff with different people that we read about, you got to look at yourself in that way too and be like, well, dang, how I want my story to go. Is
Right,
this what I want to see for myself? And that's where those limiting beliefs come from. When we start telling ourselves that we're not worthy of certain things, or I can't do this, and we just put all these limitations on ourselves because we're looking at our current circumstances, that we're so linear that we can't look outside of just what's right here in front of us. We're not expanding our perspectives of ourselves. So that's why that deep work within, that's how you're going to start to lay that solid foundation for yourself on your journey when you're crafting your new story.
right.
Because like you said, your past, you're gonna have to make amends with that.
Yes,
You talking about a new story, you want bigger and better, and you truly want this, like you really want it, you willing to cut ties with anybody, any place, any job, whatever that is not aligning with you or is not evolving you or making you the better version of yourself.
right.
So like I know me and you were talking earlier and stuff, and like this one hits home with me because some of us are big on family. I'm big on family. And you can want to have these great things and you can have this vision for your life and this plan about what you want to do, where you want to go, what you want to accomplish, and then you want to take people along with you, and it doesn't mean necessarily have to be family. It could be romantic partnerships,
Right.
friends, whatever the case may be. Maybe those things could be things that you need to let go in order to get what you want, because with writing your story, sometimes though that new paradigm can't even come in for you because you still holding on to old baggage.
Yes,
You still trying to be the bad lady and carry everything around with you, carry all the bags, all the people around with you, thinking, okay, yeah, I'm gonna need them when I go over here. No, you're gonna have to drop some of them bags.
absolutely.
'Cause
Absolutely.
in order for that new to come in, you must get rid of something. How are you going to make room? It's just like with anything, even like down to the simplest mundane things. If you have some new furniture, you want new furniture, you're gonna get rid of the old furniture before you bring the new in, right?
Absolutely.
You can't keep it and
Absolutely.
try to sustain it. Well, it's not that bad. It might not be that bad, but it won't be any room for it. Both of them ain't gonna be able to coexist. You're gonna have to pick one or the other. You can't have both.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And two, oftentimes our lack of ability to let things go creates blockages in areas that we can't even imagine. Because if
Mhm.
I'm not willing to let go of my furniture, like that example you just gave, that means that within myself, I'm setting up this inability to let go, period.
Mhm.
So therefore, I'm blocking flow in general. I'm blocking flow in other areas of my life because I'm not letting things flow.
Yep.
So money's not going to flow, ideas are not going to flow, maybe friendships, relationship, things are not going to flow because I'm creating this block, and it seems like it's only related to furniture, but ultimately I'm creating a block in myself, in my mind, and in everything associated with me just by not letting go in this one area. And so, it's important for us to really just simplify, break things down for ourselves, acknowledge that everything that we currently have was part of our old story. And if we want something new, then we have to be willing to let go of everything that is not part of this new story. I'm writing something new. So this willingness to be able to start from scratch. And ultimately, we don't have to let everything go. It's a gradual process, but there
Mhm.
definitely has to be that willingness where you like, I'm ready to do whatever cuz I can't take this no more, you know? And it's like it's about you. It's not like you're giving up things or sacrificing things for somebody else or sacrificing it, just because somebody wants you to or you think that's right. It's about you. Are
Mhm.
you going to make this life what you want it to be? Do you really believe that you deserve the things that you're saying you want? Because if
Mhm.
you really believe that you're worthy, then you will do what it takes to make sure that you get what you deserve, that you will
Mhm.
get what you believe is for you. And it's like a lot of times we overcomplicate things so much. It's like, oh, I'm writing my story now, I got to figure out this and this, and it's like, no, it really just begins with us identifying what we know about a story. You know what I mean? A
Mhm.
story is typically written, so there's a written component. Are you writing down your ideas? Are you writing down your vision? Are you making it simple and plain so that you can see it, so that you can refer back to it? And these are simple things that oftentimes we're not doing. We're just saying, I want a lot of money. What does that mean? That's very, very unclear. It's not decisive. It's not specific. So how are you going to attain it? How do you even know when you've attained what you really mean if you're not clarifying these things? So that's really one of the first components of a story that we really need to hone in on. It's about writing it down. Make the vision plain.
Mhm.
Be specific. What do you really want? And a lot of times that requires a deep self exploration, because I know
Mhm.
for myself, initially, I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I don't like what's going on here. I don't know what I want, but I don't want this. And so as I began to really give time to, okay, you don't want this, but what do you want? And it was like I had to start writing things down because I had no idea. So it was almost
Yep.
like this big brainstorming process of clarifying, wow, what do I really want my life to look like? I've never even explored these possibilities before. And that activity of writing things down in and of itself begins to open up and break down some of those limiting beliefs that we're holding on to, because when it's just you and a sheet of paper, there are no limits. So it just begins to take you other places that you may not have explored before.
Yeah, it's like stepping into that unknown. Like you just exploring uncharted territory. And that's essentially what this whole journey is about. Because you never know if you don't venture into the wilderness.
Right.
How will you know? It's like because most of us really don't know what we want. I know I've been there before. And like that's what it means when we say you gotta get real honest with yourself. Cause like it's easy to identify what we don't like. Okay, now what do you want? And then you sitting up there stuck and you drawing blanks because you like, well dang, I don't know.
Right.
And that's the importance of, going within and knowing yourself because one thing we're so conditioned to as what we think our life should look like. So with that conditioning growing up from a little child, because when we're children, we have these imaginations. We know what we want to be. if it's doing many things. Did you hear my son? I don't know what he got going on in there. But yeah, we have this thing of we think we know what we want, or when we're children, we know exactly what we want. But then we have our parents, we have society, they tell us to be more realistic and be more
Right.
logical and stuff. But it's like, no, that child knows what they want. You're gonna have to get a little childlike when it
Yes.
comes to creating your story. Because like you said, you have to document it. How are you gonna write it? How are you gonna know your story if you don't have no documentation for it? You look at all these movies and all these other people, they write their life stories in books or they have a movie out. So where's your script?
Right.
And you're gonna have to be the one that dictates how your script go, because we know that most of us have been conditioned, but with that knowing, it's like, what are you gonna do next with that
Yeah.
knowing? Because it's one thing to just blame everything purely on society, but it's like when you're your own hero of your story. It don't matter what nobody else done did to you, because
Exactly.
now the responsibility is all on you. Your focus should just be on now. And I found that when I started scripting my life story, that's when things really started for me. Because once you start writing, you're gonna continue to write. This script
Yeah.
may change. You may look at this script one day and like this I don't like where this scene is going. I'm gonna just
Right.
take that one out and write a different one in. I thought I wanted that one in, but now that ain't a good idea. Let me put something new in. And it's essentially you being the captain, the author of the story. So you
Yes.
have to know what's best for you, what's gonna work for you. But most people, like I say, that fear thing. Fear is that blockage,
Right.
because fear comes with those limiting, it's tied into those limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, especially if we're in a season where we're not as progressive as we want to be and our circumstances aren't the best. We may think, well, I don't have this to be able to get there, instead of looking at that and saying, how can I get this?
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
reframing your whole circumstances and looking at them from a different light, instead of having that fear that you're not going to be able to do it, because most of us are still in that scarcity mindset and we
Absolutely.
think we're lacking something, and once you're living in lack, you can't see beyond that, because you're looking at is your limitation, what's standing right in front of you, instead of changing the narrative, which is changing your mind first, your thoughts and your beliefs, and not
Absolutely.
just even believing these things about you, because you want those beliefs to turn and you actually knowing that this thing is going to work out. You don't
Right.
have to always know the details, just write the script and allow it to play out. You got to flow with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as we write things, they become more real because an idea in our head is just like a wisp of smoke. You know what I mean? It's very
Hmm.
intangible. Once you write it down, it's something tangible. It's
Hmm.
physically written on a paper. You know what I mean? So now it exists to a higher degree than it did previously before you wrote it down. But something important that I really heard you mention about, with your script, you don't like a part, you take it out, and I think that that's a critical component of a story or of writing a script and writing your narrative that we oftentimes don't address. The editing process, like editing, is a huge part of any story. Every book, you know what I mean, that you've ever written has gone through extensive editing. Well, it should. Not that it should, but it typically does. Being an editor is a whole job. That's what people do. You know what I mean? So part of the story is the editing process. And we have to embrace that part. You get to erase stuff that that you didn't like. You get to cross it out. You get
Hmm.
to cut that clip out of the final product, and you get to edit your story. And it's important for us to know that nothing is written in stone. Today I could come on here and say this, and tomorrow I can change my mind. And it's
Hmm.
all okay as long as we're honest about it, and saying, you know what, I was going that direction. I don't really like how this is going, just like you said. And I'm going to revise it. I'm going to edit. And it's like anytime we write things down, we do edit. You write a paper for school, there's the editing part. You know what I mean? You create content, there's that editing piece. And it's like we oftentimes look at other people's final product without considering that editing factor, that there was a lot of effort and time put into making this look this way. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes, behind the curtain, you know? And I mean, that part is usually not pretty, but that's what real life is. That part
Mhm.
that the people don't get to see, you know? And I mean, you and I, for example, we're here showing up, we're sharing our skill set, speaking our mind, and really just doing our best to inspire people and to share some skills. But nobody knows the blood, sweat, and tears that went into acquiring this knowledge, or what the latter part of our day looked like, or the latter part of our week. And I mean, ultimately, that's nobody's business unless we desire to share it.
Mhm.
However, it always needs to be understood that there is this behind the scenes part, this editing
Mhm.
process that is going on. You know what I mean? And before we come on here, we got to just shake off whatever happened before, and present what we desire to be seen. And so, you know, we can't just look at what other people are doing and think that that's what their whole life looks like. That's not real, you know. And so we got to know that life gets messy for everybody. And, you know, on this journey and in writing your story, it's this continuous unfolding. It's not a place we arrive at. You know, granted, we do achieve certain goals and then we set new ones, and on it goes. And so, just because you achieve a certain level doesn't mean that difficult times don't arise, doesn't mean that family problems are not going to show up, doesn't mean that maybe some financial issues may not arise. Because the wealthier you get, then you're just dealing with bigger numbers. It don't mean that it's not, you know, still configurations needed to be made. So, you know, we really have to know what is real, what, and life is complicated, it's complex, but it's also a fun, exciting adventure.
Yeah, and that's the good part about it. If you treat it like a adventure, like exploring, that's why I say to get back into that childlike, state, that curious side, that adventurous side, that side that uses his imagination. And so to make it more practical, when you were speaking about editing your story, okay, let's say like for instance, you may not like your current environment, your current hometown or wherever you reside. You feel like your environment is not healthy enough for you to be able to prosper in the way that you want. Okay. Now we're editing your script. Now you got to open your mind up. You say you want a healthy environment. Well, that means create you one.
Yeah,
What,
right.
what is a healthy environment? You got to ask yourself a question. What does my ideal healthy environment look like for me? So that comes with you literally sitting there and envisioning what you want. Because first, when you start with that vision, that's when that helps you to write down the vision.
Right.
So if you want a healthier environment, now that you have the vision for it, go create it. If it's not here, if this isn't the environment for yourself, but right now this is your current circumstance, then you need to find a way outside of where you currently are for you to be able to have that healthy environment for yourself. Because complaining, that's not going to help it. It's not going
Uh,
to change anything. It's just a cop out, honestly. Because
right.
if you're essentially the creator of your story, you're the hero in your own story, then that comes with boldness. That comes with courageousness. So that means you gonna have to, put your big girl panties on and figure out another way.
Yes.
Let's create, and that's the fun part about it. Like we can look at it as it's so tough, it's so challenging, it's hard work, but it doesn't have to be hard, honestly. We make it hard because we sometimes we take life too serious. And I
Right.
won't say serious, some of us do take life serious. And I'm not saying don't be serious because sometimes serious matters happen. But it life be lifing. So a good laugh and to make this thing fun and exciting for you to help you to, prepare for it, go for it. Because
Yes.
that's the thing about me. My childlike curiosity, my imagination, my playfulness, I won't ever let that die. Cause that on the days when I'm not at my best or I began to complain about where my story is at, that's the time for me to go within and pick that pen up.
Right.
So in those days when you just feeling like, this ain't it, you feeling really low. That's a good thing because that means you need to get to writing in that script.
Yeah.
Now you know what that block is, what's hindering you. It's that
Right.
thought. Like you got to figure out what that thought is tied to. Like where is this coming from? What is this a belief that you have about yourself? Okay, now we need to work on this. Let's
Right.
put down this thought that I'm having, this belief and stuff, and let's rework this thing. Instead of, I know what it looks like now and what I'm believing. What am I trying to transition to?
Right.
Let's change this negative into something positive.
Absolutely.
Script it.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. And I mean, there's a technique that I utilize that I call overstanding. And it's where you clearly identify the thing that you don't like, whatever it is that's stressing you out, the part that you wish was different. Identify it. What is the main source of contention for you in your life right now? And once you identify it, then you take some time, you invest the time in yourself, even if it begins with something as minimal as 5 to 15 minutes. Invest the time in beginning to imagine, what do I want this to look like? This is stressing me out beyond repair. Let me flip it and go to the other side and start figuring out, how do I want this to look? And I mean, because there's always the opposite that we can imagine in our mind. You know what I mean? So if I hate this, what would I love? We always can do that, and it just happens by flipping it over.
Flip it.
So once you understand what's stressing you, you can overstand it by beginning to imagine the possibilities of what you really want. And then
Mhm.
once we make that plain for ourselves, there is always one thing at least that we can do immediately about it. There's always one thing. You know what I mean? And so it's really about us giving that initial time investment to starting to figure this out, to beginning to decide, what do I want? Because this is a journey and we're being divinely led, but we're being led based on what we're focusing on. So if you're focusing on how you can't, then you'll be led to why you can't.
Mhm.
And if you're focusing on how there is one thing that you can do to make this vision real, you will be able to do that, because a lot of times that initial step, after we've made it plain and written down what we really do want our situation to look like, then the initial step a lot of times is just research. Maybe it's go to the library and get a book. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Maybe it's join a Facebook group. Like
Mhm.
there's so many simple things that we can be led to do, but we do have to take that initial step of really clearly identifying what is it we don't like,
Mhm.
and then simply looking, what would the opposite of that be? What would make me happy? If this situation were just like this, I'd be so happy. What is that? What does that mean? And I mean, this is very simple, practical things that we can immediately begin to implement. And it really helps to empower us, because oftentimes, like you mentioned, we're looking at what we don't have. I don't have
Mhm.
the money to do that. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have this. And it's like, you may not have those things, but like you said, you got to create it. You
Mhm.
can allot 5 minutes. Start with that. I'm going
Mhm.
to give 5 minutes to just imagining what I want my life to look like. Are you not worth that investment? And that's the whole thing. We will not get a return on what we don't invest in.
Mhm.
And we often hear about investing and we think automatically about money. But we all have this time to invest. And I don't mean that we have so much time that is not allotted for. I mean, we all got 24 hours in a day.
Mhm.
What you going to do with it? Are you going to invest any of that into what you're saying that you want, or what you believe you deserve? These are the real choices that we have to make. And I mean, ultimately, everybody can say they don't have time for certain things, but we got to carve it out because it becomes a priority to you. So it's like, where do you fall on your priority list? Are you worthy of a little bit of time to configure your life? I mean, you
Right.
absolutely are. Ultimately, this is your life. If you're not going to configure it into the way that you want it to be, then what really is the point?
Mhm.
Like, what are we doing here? Living just to go through the motions? I really don't believe that that's God's will.
Mhm. Leslie says right. What is right, Leslie? Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, like you are your biggest investment. Like I know when we hear investment, we tend to think of just money. I'm like, no, the biggest investment is gonna be the investment that you put in on yourself
Right.
because you are every day. All that other stuff outside of you, you have no control over. You are with you 24/7, 25/8.
Right.
So where you invest your time and your energy, that's gonna be the biggest indicator of where your life is gonna head. Because if all you're focusing on is the lack, the negative of where your life is now, you miss all that time and energy you could have put into finding a different solution. And it's
Right.
not about making these big leaps forward. It's about those small steps, like you said. Because some of us we underestimate the small stuff. You start small, you celebrate those small steps because you're doing something different than what you were currently doing. That's why I say make amends with your past because sometimes your past gonna always be trying to come back into play.
That's a
That's that,
fact.
that's that self-sabotaging, them limiting beliefs, all that is gonna try to creep back when you're trying to do something new. But that's mainly your ego. So when that comes into play in those moments, that's not a moment to beat yourself up because it's
Right.
always around lingering. Because most
Absolutely.
of us we're so used to being a certain way that it does take time for us to, get out of those limiting beliefs and stuff. So when they happen, don't beat yourself up about it. Just know that this is a moment for me to just stop and self-reflect and go within and figure out, what's going on right now with me.
Right.
So, and that's the importance of having that journal and stuff. And
Yeah.
while you're scripting your life, write those moments out when you're feeling doubtful, you feeling insecure, or you feeling scared. Write it down on the paper. Okay, you can put problem over here, and then you can have a column over here that say solution. Now that you've identified all your problems, now create a solution for each one of them. Play a game with yourself. Script the solutions in. Now you know what you're trying to get to. It'll be now you can enjoy the process and the exploration of you actually overcoming those problems. That's
Absolutely.
that's that key point is having fun with it. Like life is already tough as it is.
Right.
So why and if we're saying it's what you make it because it really is what you make it because
Right.
it's your story. You're the author. How are you gonna make it? If you want a sad story, then you can't complain with what you get
Right.
because that's all you're tuning into. And by tuning into, that's like the things that you feed your mind. So if you're looking at TV shows, listening to music, you around people who talking on that same, lack frequency or whatever,
Right.
then that's what you're going to attract. But you start tuning in, putting your energy into the things that you want to see, then that can help give you some momentum and keep you in the right direction. Cause like the things that you digest, and I'm not just talking food. Like I said, the TV, the people, the
Yes.
environments that you're in, the friend groups, whatever. That's the stuff that you digesting and consuming. That's your time and your energy. So I even still have the moments where I may catch myself. I could just be scrolling or something, or I've been on saw something. Now I'm in my feelings, and I have to catch myself like, you out of alignment. Get back on script. Off script. You off.
Absolutely.
Get back on script.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, that's the whole thing. Us really being that aware of ourselves and paying that close attention to ourselves to acknowledge when we are out of alignment. And that's part of life. That's ultimately what the real work is getting in alignment, maintaining that alignment, and acknowledging that we're not always going to be in alignment. That's why we got to bring it back, develop techniques, tools, mantras, keep positive things around you and feed ourselves, ingest positive things, like you were saying, so that those are the thoughts that we're thinking about. Because the things that we're thinking about come from what we're ingesting. The things that you're taking in are what are forming your thoughts. That's why when you lay down in bed at night, you're thinking about stuff that happened throughout the day. You're thinking of that movie that you watched last week. You're thinking of what that person said to you earlier. Because these are all the things that we're taking in. So if we want to change our life, we have to be very intentional about the things that we're taking in. We have to, on purpose, start feeding ourselves good things. And I mean, our self talk is so important. It's like, what are the things that you're saying to yourself? How do you bring yourself back into alignment when you start feeling a little bit off? And our feelings are the key indicators of when we're getting out of alignment. That's when we don't feel good. We don't feel happy. We feel drained, a little discouraged, a little insecure. And not that anything is wrong with those things, because they're normal parts of life. But us acknowledging, all right, I'm feeling like that because I'm thinking something weird. What am I thinking right now? That ain't it. Let me feed myself something empowering, or let me tell myself something, positive. Let me sit down and journal, or whatever it is that you're developing for yourself to bring yourself back into alignment. But ultimately, we think that our main work is our career or our family or even our kids. And don't get me wrong, I have all of those things and they're all very important. But our main job is to manage ourselves, and to make sure that we're doing with this life what we were sent here to do, living our purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like we are each writing our own story, and nobody wants to write themselves in the story as the loser. Like, you know what I mean? You are writing the story, you are the author. You get to put in whatever you want, no matter how impossible or outlandish it seems. You can create it. Everything begins with an idea. And anyone who's achieved anything great, it started simply them having the idea, simply them making it plain, and day by day taking gradual steps as they're led. It's like, say I want to climb a tree. I have to decide that that's what I want to do first and foremost. But I don't jump from the ground to the top of the tree. It's step by step. Maybe I fell a couple of times, you know what I mean? And really just being willing to continue forward and to keep going after the story that I believe is for me, and not giving up until I win, until I achieve that vision, because ultimately nobody can save your life but you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that obviously we need God. We're all spirits. And so there's this spiritual realm and these spiritual aspects at play. However, it is through our choices that we tap into them. It is through our choices that we're able to establish conviction, commitment. And, it's through our choices that we're able to invest time, invest money into ourselves. So ultimately, it has to be us who are making the decision to really go after what we say we want. And we're the only one who can do it. Nobody can do it for us. And it all begins with our mindset,
Mm-hmm.
us believing that we are worthy of what we say we want. Because if we believe that we deserve it, then we will make sure that we get it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a major lesson that I've had to learn on my journey. I
Yeah.
started at one point getting up early in the mornings. And I mean, this was way back when, several years ago. But I started getting up early in the morning, and it was so hard initially because I wasn't getting up that early. But it's like you need this time before everybody else is awake to really, meditate, to focus, to do your routines, and then you can set your day on a strong footing. And so what I started telling myself is, I'm getting up early because I'm worth it. I'm worth it. I don't care how tired I feel. I don't care if I got to drag myself out the bed. I'm worth it. I'm going to get what's mine. And initially it felt a little bit ridiculous. It's like, oh, you're worth like getting up at 4:30 in the morning. And it's like, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. I'm worth it. I know that this is a key component to me accomplishing what I desire in life. So I have to set this pattern for myself, and I'm worth it. So we have to really believe that we're worth it, and it
Mm-hmm.
starts by us giving that initial time investment. If you're not willing to invest a few minutes to begin to write out your vision, to begin to write out what you really want, then you're not going to progress to the next step. So we got to start somewhere, and we start simply. And remember that you are worth it. You do deserve it. Whatever you want, is you want it because you're meant to have it. So go get it.
That's right. Look, you remind me of me on my journey because you just called me out. I was one of those people that look, you wouldn't catch me writing because I had so many people, mentors, teachers telling me, showing me how to journal and stuff, and I'm like, nah, just not for me. I don't want to do that. And I don't even know when I started picking up a pen and journaling and actually writing my script, but when I did, the game changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, so this is what this journaling stuff, because once you get into it, you become so proactive in your life, because now you have that self-love for yourself. You have that self-care, and that's what you mean by nourishing yourself. It's almost like nurturing everything about yourself. You're nurturing your mental, your emotional, all of that, your physical, in order to, get to where you want to be. So that self-love and that self-compassion that you have for yourself is going to be key component, because to love yourself, you'll give yourself great things. You'll do the
Yeah.
things that you need to do for you. And like you said, getting up early, yeah, you worth it. You have to know that you're worth what you're doing, because if you don't believe that, and I know that was one of my limiting beliefs that I had. I didn't think that I was worth it. And that's exactly what I was getting. That's why I wasn't seeing no progress until I started taking inventory, and I started editing that script.
Right.
All this stuff, that repeats of stuff, I'm like, this ain't working for you. Now that we've identified that this is not working, what we gonna do to change this? Because
Right.
this right here is not good. It doesn't go with the script that you trying to portray for yourself. The script that you want for you, yeah, that's not matching up. So that's when that self-compassion comes in, where you start to nurture yourself. And like you said, you can do the affirmations. In order to get something that you never had, you got to do things you never did.
Right.
And so you can start with things like affirmations, or having these mantras that you say for yourself, especially in the times when you experiencing your self-doubt or your lack of self-worth. That's when you create your own mantras for yourself. So if it's self-doubt that you battling, create you some mantras when you in
Right.
self-doubt, and say them to yourself. And you can look at yourself in the mirror and say it until you have this inner knowing. I don't care if you don't believe it at that moment, but it's a practice. Practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
That's why you have to
Absolutely.
have certain practices in place for yourself, because that's a part of the work. Some of
Absolutely.
us think it's more so doing something physical all the time. Sometimes it's that mental work that you have to put in, because that mental work, you get a solid foundation on that mental, then everything else that falls into play. So now you don't even have to think twice about, doing the extra things like waking up in the morning, or, on in those moments when you're not at your best, you just pick up that journal and you retweak that script. You
Right.
get on the other side of it, because now you're taking control of it, and then that starts to build your confidence and your self-worth, and it empowers you, because now
Absolutely.
you're taking that responsibility to even step into that path where you become your own hero. That shows courage. So that
Yes.
making that initial step, that's a huge step, because most people don't like to take that path. Most people like to rely on things and people outside of themselves to tell them who they are and tell them how they should do it. Some
Right.
people rely on other people. Some people don't know how to rely on themselves. A lot of us do tend to run from ourselves and our true power, because we feel inadequate, as if we don't possess this greatness. We don't possess the good qualities. We don't possess the direction of knowing where we want to head. But it's like, if it's your journey, then who better to write the script?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is that we are not able to overcome anything unless we confront it. So it's like you're always going to be in bondage to whatever you feel like is the insecurity, or you're not good enough in this area. You'll always feel like that until you step up and try it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that courage piece is so important. You have to be willing to face whatever it is you're afraid of. And I mean, that is hard. It is hard. But the thing is that, again, we can just take baby steps. You don't have to, like, I'm scared of public speaking. Now I'm speaking in front of 1,000 people. No, you don't have to do it like that. You know what I mean? You could go alone and start practicing in the mirror. Then from
Yeah.
there, maybe you can record a 1 minute video and post it. And as you take each step, they're all scary. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But when you break it down into these small incremental steps, even though they're scary, you acknowledge, you know what, I know I actually can do that. You know
Mm-hmm.
that you can do it because you're, again, being kind to yourself, being compassionate, as you also mentioned, and really just giving yourself the room and the grace to grow step by step, moment by moment. And I mean, that's how a story is written, word by word. Is one word at a time. And words are small. I mean, granted, some are long, some are big, some are difficult to know the meaning of them. You know what I mean? But those are all parts of the journey. And we have to be willing to take these little small incremental steps, because as we do, we're beginning to be transformed into who we need to be to have what we say we want. And who we need to be is that hero, that person that is out there fighting for us, that person that is after going at, who is going after what we say we want for us. You're the one. You know, and oftentimes we think that somebody else is going to show up and save the day. And it's like, no, it's you. You're the one. You're the one who has been gifted with the talent, the abilities, the strength, the focus, everything you need. You have it. You just have to cultivate it. You know, you have to get clear on what you want and then begin taking the little steps. Because, like I mentioned earlier, there is always something that we can do. Always something that we can do, you know? And I mean, in the beginning of my journey, well, earlier on in my journey, I always wanted to inspire and encourage people. And I felt like I was scared to be in front of the camera. Didn't want to post videos or really show my face. So I began posting motivational quotes. And it was like, that was what I could do at the time. That's what I had the capacity for. But I had to be very intentional. Okay, I'm going to do something in the direction that I want to do. I'm scared to death of this part, but what can I do? So I can do this. And after doing that consistently for several months, then it was like, okay, now you need to start speaking. And that was very scary too, you know? And but I pushed myself because I'm like, what it can stop me? Nothing can stop me from taking the next step that's presented to me except me. Am I going to keep stopping me? You know, who's been stopping me my whole life? It's been me. Am I going to keep standing in my own way? Am I going to get to the end and say, I didn't make it because I stopped me? We don't want to say that. You know, I mean, trust me, that's not going to feel good at all. I don't even want to imagine what that feels like. Praise God, that's not the story I'm writing for myself. But ultimately, we're the only ones that can stop us, because we can always put one foot in front of the other, you know, and it's for us to know that it's not about these huge, massive leaps. You know, it's about taking small incremental action, these 2 millimeter turns that are going to just gradually lead us toward our destination. And as we do that, then we begin to attract other people that are doing similar things, you know,
Mhm.
and it offers to us support, encouragement, because we get to watch them doing it too. And then we
Mhm.
get to also hear them tell us how they were so scared too. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, good. I thought it was just me.
But then you look at how far you come. And
Yes.
that's the only time I would say look back to
Yes.
see how far you come, because you
Right.
know
To
those
celebrate.
days to celebrate, because like you said, you started off just doing the motivational quotes. And look at you now. You would
Yes.
have like just knowing you now, you would have thought, oh, this comes natural to you, but you took those small steps. And it was a journey. It
Yes.
may not have happened fast, and things don't always progress fast. So you got to give yourself that flexibility and that compassion to allow yourself the time and the space to gradually, get to these next steps and not be ashamed of it, because that vulnerability, I had to learn that vulnerability is a superpower.
Yes.
So when you get vulnerable with yourself, you become more honest with yourself, because those vulnerabilities, those are going to be the keys to you getting to the other side of what you want. That's just highlighting to you what you need to fix in order for you to get that life that you want.
Right.
It's not nothing to make you feel bad, because if you're feeling bad, that's just an indicator that this is what I need to work on. Like I said, the fear. Fear is your friend. It's there to show you what belief or thoughts that you're still holding on to about yourself. It's like taking that self inventory, and you got to do that every day,
Yes.
because this journey, it gets tough sometimes. But to be able to just give yourself that grace and just keep on going those baby steps, and then not being in a rush to just see results.
Right.
It takes time. And I like to always go back to like a butterfly. It starts off as a caterpillar, goes in the cocoon. That took some time.
Absolutely.
That takes time, but it's like you gotta fall in love with the journey, because it's a journey. Because once you go through this transformation, your story just changes, and it keeps on changing as long as life goes. So don't think that it's a destination once things start to look up and you actually have that life that you want. But as you progress in life, is that going to be all you want? Because
Right.
us as humans, we don't ever be satisfied with nothing. We want more and more and more. So,
Yes.
like, you're gonna have to create. That means you're gonna have to do more. You're gonna have to do some different things and just fall in love with that journey, and not let that childlike curiosity within you just die.
Right.
You gotta let it just keep on flowing, because
Absolutely.
that's what's gonna help keep you in the game, to have that imagination, and that comes with those practices that you can do for yourself. On the moments where you everything isn't looking up, envision where you want yourself to be. Envision you already on the other side, and just
Yeah.
feel that joy. How you feel in that moment when you envision that, that's what you have to remain in.
Right.
And almost like being what you want to see. If you want to see greatness, then why are you operating in such a way that's not equivalent to greatness?
Right.
You got to be, and that's why we say be in gratitude each and every day, because as you live in gratitude, you're grateful for where you are, and you'll be even grateful when you get to where you want to go. It doesn't matter whether you're lacking something at the moment, you're not where you want to be. You're grateful because you know that's where you need to be, and you gave yourself that compassion, and you're being patient with your journey, and you're learning to just let life flow as it is. And it's not always about how fast you get there. It's about where you start. And starting now is the hardest step. So to be somewhere and you may not be seeing the results, and the movie is not really panning out how you want it to just yet, go back to the drawing board.
Right.
Go back to the
Abs-
drawing board, and be patient with yourself. Don't be in such a rush. Give yourself that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, things of value take time to create. You know what I mean? Anything lasting is going to take a lot of effort on your part. So it's for us to really not so much focus on the result, but focus on what we're doing on a day to day basis. Continue to foster that commitment within ourselves so that we know we're going to keep going till we get there, because ultimately you will arrive if you don't stop till you get there. That's assured. If you just keep going, you will eventually arrive at your destination. And so, I mean, our time is winding down, but just to recap some of the things that we talked about, some of the practical things that you can do with crafting your new story is really to hone in on what are the aspects of your life that you don't like. What parts do
Mhm.
you really want to be different? Pick one thing so you don't overwhelm yourself, because
Yeah.
you could be like, my whole life is a mess. And that is completely overwhelming. And you can't fix the whole thing at one time. But
Right.
one thing will lead to another. So
Yeah.
pick one aspect that you're going to focus on. What's one thing that you really don't like that's going on in your life? And devote some time to writing down what you want it to look like. If your dream came true in that area, what would that look like? And allow yourself to feel the feeling of it, to
Hmm.
hone in on that gratitude piece. Feel what it feels like if your dreams just came true in that area. Because as we imagine those things, we do begin to feel the gratitude. We begin to feel that feeling, and we start to align with the thing because we're tapping into the gratitude of it. So it's just like you said, Coach C, imagine ourselves there. And it's like we got to see the end from the beginning. So make sure you give yourself that time. You're worth it. Sit down, write out the vision that you have for what you want, make it plain, and continue to revisit it.
Mhm.
Revisit it consistently, because the more that you look at it, the more you give time to it, the more you write down the new ideas that are coming to you, the more prevalent it will be in your mind. You know,
Mhm.
and we are constantly thinking of the things we expose ourselves to. So expose yourself to your vision. Let that
Mhm.
be the thing you start thinking about before you go to bed at night. And inevitably, that will lead to action. You will begin to take some other action. Oh, maybe I could try this now. Or somebody might even come to you and say, oh, I've joined this group that's about this. And it's like, oh, was that a miracle? And ultimately it was. It's part of that divine guidance system that lines things up for us once we really begin to focus and commit on what it is we want. So you got the power.
That's right. And I just wanted to add one more thing before we get out of here. With the fear, a practice that you can do is just deep breathing. Because that's something that helped me on my journey with, battling anxiety. Because I know a lot of people talk about, just having anxiety. And that comes from those thoughts and stuff, those limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves. But once you're actually on this journey and you actually challenge those beliefs and you don't look at them as if there's something negative, it's just revealing something about you that you're still holding on to. You look at it and you just start to breathe literally, because sometimes we're not even breathing properly, and that's that where that anxiety comes in. So just when you having those moments and you got some new things you're trying to explore, just get in a space where you relax yourself and do some mindful practices, whether it's meditation or whatever. But always check in with your breathing. In those moments where you off script, remember, if you off script, just practice being here, and then you can concentrate your breath on being right here in the now. But we about to get up out of here, y'all. We want to thank all y'all for tuning in with us. Thank you, Leslie, for being here and
Yes,
doing
thank
this
you.
conversation
And
with
thank
us.
you for those positive comments, because they were encouraging me as we were speaking. I'm like, oh, yeah, we doing good.
That's right. That's right. Y'all already know, whether you just beginning your self-discovery journey or you've been on it for a while, it's always room for growth. So let's explore that magic within. And we're gonna keep on going, y'all. Until
Yes,
next.
absolutely. See you in 2 weeks. Peace.